outside of what these parameters we think that we've set for them to be. I think another thing is that we talked about, or that we want to talk about rather, is the idea of responsibility. Black men, black women, what are their responsibilities? How should they be accountable for this idea? Dealing with a black man first, being a black man wanting to address this issue in particular, I think that there has to be a level of accountability and responsibility to the black family structure. And that does not necessarily mean that you have to be in the same race relationship, but as a black man, I think each of us have an obligation to reach behind us and pull up that next generation of black boys. We have to show them the way to have an understanding of who they are and really value themselves, really value the surroundings that they're in from a strengths perspective. We have to tell them that there is a value in who you are as a black man, that there's a value in who women are as black women. One of my favorite quotes is from Common that says, when we lessen our women, our condition seems to worsen. So that if we can instill in this generation of black boys that in order for us to rise together, we have to rise or help uplift our black women for them to value themselves and to appreciate themselves instead of doing things that constantly make them question and degrade themselves. So then their self-concept is off. That will further perpetuate, what we know as our existence. Because, when you really think about it, and a thing that Lydia Cotton, one of my good friends of mine who posts on her blog, is that, black women are the only people that can generate birth of black boys or black girls. Only people that continue that legacy on. So then, if they're the only ones that can continue that legacy, how are we going to expect that our conditions are going to change if we're continuing to treat them less than how they should be treated? One thing my father always told me was that you never treat a woman any different than you'd want your sister or your mother to be treated. And that's something that I've tried to hold true to myself and understanding how it is when I engage in dating or when I'm in relationships, and that those are things that we really have to consider as black men. What is our role in making sure that our women feel appreciated, that they feel loved, that they understand that who they are is a beautiful thing, and that we appreciate that. And I think we have to really engage that a little bit more and do our best work and do an honorable and brilliant job of making sure that these black boys understand that this is important. I think another thing dealing with responsibility and accountability that I think black women sometimes have to understand as well is that there's this idea of stereotype threat. Now, stereotype threat is kind of an academic focus that deals with this idea that African Americans are aware of the stereotypes about them in education. And because of their awareness of these stereotypes, they're actually less likely to perform highly because they're expected to fail. Now, I think the same thing happens with this idea of this good black man. So that the good black men that are out there probably have a fear, I know that I do personally, have a fear of making sure that they can uphold that legacy and are going to be able to do that, but also have the opportunity to still be human. And that, when we're going to meet black women, that we're not automatically in this pile of negatives of what it's said to be, black men, and that black men do all these negative things, and that we're constantly in fighting those forces because there's a preconceived notion of how I'm going to treat you because that's what's expected of a black man. So as a good black man, there's a fear there. There's an anxiety of always having to do what it is that we can to be the best black man possible, and that there's no margin for error. And even in the instance where we're looking at female responsibility, when we're looking at these measures of how quality black men are in relationships, at what point in time have we dismissed them because of something that may or may not be something minor in light of all the other things that those black men bring to the table. That's one thing that Lydia addressed at her piece and responding to this is the black female accountability. What is the role of self in the things that are happening in our lives? I think for both black men and women, we have to evaluate who we are independently about what's going on in this picture. What is my role in the fact that black women are not being married black women? What is your own role in black women not being married? How can we start to look at self as a way of finding out where those problems are? When an archer misses his target, he doesn't look for anything but the fault within themselves. The target hasn't moved, right? So it's the same sort of concept in that the responsibility now lies in doing a self-critique of saying, what have I contributed to this issue that is making it not work for me? Not work for black women as a whole, but not work for me. I think especially when you're looking at the rise of this independence movement and black women in corporate America and the things that are almost in complete opposition to being a married, housewife, if you will, and having kids, and those things that women have to kind of deal with that we need to understand as well, that they're going through a number of struggles in their professional careers of even having to say that, okay, I know I can't get married between X year and X year because I'm trying to get to this point in my career, and that they're sacrificing that in order to be at their best professional state. And one of those drawbacks is that when you do that, there's a possibility that when you're ready, that those black men aren't going to be there. And as we've kind of seen, there's a constant back and forth that, black men are ready when they're older, black women might be ready when they're younger, and there's constantly this give and take where they're not ready at the same time. So, Steve Harvey giving that advice about dating older black men, that's something to consider as well when you're looking at this way and this fluctuation of how people are interacting together. So I think that's kind of dealing with that responsibility. What is responsibility of self and the roles and the things that are coming out in my own life, and how can I make it better to put these thoughts and these ideas in the forefront to ensure that at least I, as a person of one, will be able to walk down that aisle and to be with a person that is going to love me for me. So I think that those are, again, kind of just a couple of ideas, again, one person's perspective. I think this is going to require some follow-up after the dialogue is initiated from this vlog. And hopefully the conversations will continue. The black men will use the platforms that they have to also engage this, and I definitely welcome that. I hope that that happens. One thing that I did want to address, and we don't have a whole lot more time, as the blog's getting kind of long, is a question I got from one of my followers that wanted to deal with, what is the role that women can do to ensure that they're raising sons who understand the idea of helping their race of people and dating black women and all these sorts of things. And I think a lot of that is going to be one, having conversations with your sons at a very early age is something definitely to consider, but also to be able to find black male role models that may not be that person's father, but are father-like figures in the community in which you live in that can provide some sort of support for that individual boy. I think that women have done an amazing job raising men in general. We are a generation of men raised by women who have constantly stepped to the plate to do the job of both mom and dad. But I think that there is something to be said for black men being in a space where they're having conversations with these black boys because they see themselves in us. So we have to be in a place where we give access to these young men to say that I can aspire to be this, I can aspire to act this way, I can aspire to have a certain value system and an ideal set. And those are things that have to be considered that, we, in an optimal situation, we want to make sure that black men are directly related to black boys as their sons, but in the case that they're not, we have to use the strengths of the black family in these extended families. So these aunties, these uncles, these play cousins, and that we're all using our collective identity in its many pieces and its various forms to reinforce a stronger collective identity that isn't based on our individualism and our individual aspirations and our individual viewpoints, but that we're contributing to the greater whole. Because I am, because we are, and we are, therefore I am. That is the ontology of that African proverb, is that we have to understand who we are in the greater context of the larger community. So this is just another short snippet. Again, we'll probably come back and address this a little bit later. But I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this vlog. And if you have any questions, feel free to visit my website at www.charlesdavisspeaks.com. You can send me an email there. You can also follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/vocalspeakers. And hopefully we can continue to engage in this conversation. I really do appreciate your time for sharing with me this Speak Out vlog, the first of many to come in the new year. Remember, stay focused and be inspired.